A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shiloh, Rabbi David bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
What was meant by Chazal when they spoke of learning Mishnah?
The first thing to know in this regard is that Limud Mishnah, the study of the Mishnah, as referred to by Chazal, meant the learning, the hearing of, and the reciting of, and in fact the memorizing of the actual text of the Mishnah. It is important to know and always keep in mind that the Mishnah was not written initially. It was something that was taught by heart. It was given over from teacher to student by heart, and it was memorized, and that was the intention. The word Mishnah, in fact, means repetition. In fact, it implies constant repetition. The Mishnah is therefore that which is repeated, that which is recited repeatedly until one knows it by heart. That is the meaning of the word Mishnah. There is a connection between the word Mishnah, the shoresh, the root is shin, nun and he, which has to do with shana, which means repeat, and the word shnaim, two, shin nun, the root or the root letters of the word for two in Hebrew, which means to do it again, 2 times and then 3 times to continually do something, is lishnoth, to do something more than once, to do it twice, and then to continue doing further. All this is referred to by the term lishnoth, and from this word we have the word Mishnah. So the meaning of studying and learning Mishnah was the actual recitation of and memorizing of the Mishnah. Before a person could know what the precise halachic conclusion that results from the study of this Mishnah might be, before he could understand a discussion of great scholars on this Mishnah, he would first have to know what the Mishnah states, and to know also other Mishnayot, in fact, preferably to know the entire body of the Mishnah, so that he could understand the discussion fully, because usually such discussions entailed references to different sources, to another Mishnah in this Masechet or another Mishnah in a totally different Masechet, which in some way is connected, and from which comparisons, and by way of Masa and Matan, that is to say by way of debate and asking questions and receiving answers to those questions, this was the way, the methodology of studying, analyzing the Mishnah and understanding its meaning in full. And this, in fact, is the meaning of the word Talmud. Talmud refers to studying something in depth, in general, and more specifically studying the Mishnah in depth, as it was done in the earlier generations before there was a written Talmud. Talmud was also something that was done initially Ba'al Peh, that is to say, not from a written text. It was discussed in the Beit Midrash amongst Chachamim of different levels, who would take a certain text that they all had studied, and they would delve into it together, and this was known as Talmud. This was also known as Shimush Talmidei Chachamim. Here in Masechet Berachot, Daf Mem Zayin Amud Bet, we find a discussion as to the meaning of the definition of an Am Ha'aretz. What is an Am Ha'aretz? According to one of the views quoted in the Talmud, and this is the view that is accepted by the Talmud as definitive, Ahirim Amurim, other authorities state, Afilu Qara wa Shana, even a person who has studied the entire Tanakh and remembers it, knows it well, and has studied the Mishnah, wa Shana means has studied the Mishnah and knows the Mishnah, that is to say, he can recite it, he remembers what it says. But he did not spend a lot of time with great Talmidei Chachamim, with great scholars who explained to him the inner workings of the Mishnah and the information that needs to be understood as a background to an underpinning for the Mishnah, and also to understand how to extract the halacha from this or that Mishnah. That is known as Shimush Talmidei Chachamim, that is to say, to learn under and be trained by Talmidei Chachamim. A person who has not done this, says this opinion, Hare ze Am Ha'aretz, such a person is considered still to be an Am Ha'aretz. In other words, a person can know the entire Tanakh, even quoted by heart. A person can even know the entire Mishnah, all Shisha Sedarim, all 6 orders of the Mishnah. and be able to quote it even by heart. And yet, if he has not studied or not done what is referred to here as Shimush Talmidei Hachamim, he is still considered to be an Am Ha'aretz. He is not yet a Torah scholar. And Rashi explains here as follows. Rashi writes, Shilo Shimesh Talmidei Hachamim. What is this person? What do we mean by such a person who has not studied under Talmidei Hachamim? Hu HaTalmud HaTalui Bisfara. This refers to Talmud. And the word Talmud is widely misunderstood today as if it refers to a certain text, that is to say the text that we have before us today called by that name, Talmud. And today when we use the term, that is what we mean. But Rashi explains that is not the original meaning of the term, and it's very important to understand this. Rashi goes on and says, this refers to the Talmud HaTalui Bisfara, which has to do with iyun, which has to do with understanding, correct and deep insights into the meaning of the Mishnah and the underpinnings and the essential principles and rules of thumb and assumptions that are the underpinning and the basis for the entire Mishnah and for any particular set of Mishnayot or halachot in the Mishnah. This is explained to the students by the greater scholars who know the background, who know how to read between the lines and explain the meaning of the Mishnah in full. Rashi says, HaTalmud HaTalui Bisfara Shahayu Nothanim L'Divrei HaMishnah Ta'am. The Chachamim used to spend time in the Beit Midrash and discuss amongst themselves, and students would sit before them and listen to the discussions and ask questions, and they would give explanations and reasons for what the Mishnah says. وَهَيُوا مِتَأَسَّفِينَ يَحَدْ, and they would gather together in the Beit Midrash, وَعَسَكِينَ بِخَخ, and they would engage in this study. وَهِي دُغْمَتْ HaGemara شَسِدْرُ HaMoraim, as we find in the Gemara that we have before us that was put together by the Amoraim. What Rashi therefore says is that the Gemara that we have before us today, the Talmud that we have today, is a written record of such discussions that took place in the different Batei Midrash, in the different schools of Torah in Eretz Yisrael, in Bavel, etc., over many generations. And in the fullness of time, all these discussions and insights and halachic decisions were recorded in written form, and we have that before us today. So we read the Talmud, and by doing so we understand these discussions, and therefore we understand more fully, more correctly, in greater depth, the meaning of the Mishnah, of the Baraita, of any particular halakha or concept being discussed. And not only, therefore, is it the Talmud that we have before us in written form that can be correctly understood as being a Talmud, the very discussion of any Torah subject in depth is in fact to be described and understood as part of the Miswah of Talmud Torah, part of the concept of Talmud. And this we have explained for us in very explicit terms by the Rambam. Rambam writes in Ilchot Talmud Torah, Perek Aleph, Halacha Yod Aleph, V'hayav l'shalesh zeman lemidatho. A person is required to divide his time learning Torah every day into three parts. Shalish b'Torah shebichtav, a third, not necessarily precise third in the sense that it has to be 1/3 of the total time, but a part of that time, a reasonable, serious part of that time that he devotes to the study of Torah is to be devoted to the study of the Tanakh. Shalish b'Torah sheBa'al Peh, a third to the study of the Torah sheBa'al Peh, which generally means the Mishnah. Ushalish yavin uyaskil aharith davar mireshitho, and the rest of the time he should spend, a third or one-third part or one section of his time he should set aside for understanding and delving deeply into things, to understand them from their source, where you'll see davar mi davar, and by understanding one thing he is then able to learn from that another thing, another concept, another halakha, وَيُذَمِرْ دَوَارُ دَوَارُ, by comparing one case to another. And this, says the Rambam, Inyan zeh huwa nikrat Talmud. This understanding, this delving into the any halachic or Torah concept in general, and understanding the origins and the sources of the concept of the halakha, where it comes from, where it stems from, what the different opinions and reasons and explanations for those opinions are, all this is considered Talmud. Therefore, studying Talmud is not just the study of the Talmud that we have before us, with or without the Perush of Rashi, or with or without the Tosafot. Study of Talmud, in the true sense of the word, is also asking the question, how did the Rambam understand this sugya? And looking at the Rambam, for example, and then comparing it to what we find in the Talmud, and seeing how it fits or how it does not fit, if there seems to be a problem, and then coming up with an explanation. All that is part of the process of Talmud. In other words, Talmud is not just that which is written in the Gemara before us, whether it's the Talmud Yerushalmi or the Talmud Bavli. Talmud is the process of delving into and understanding more correctly, more profoundly, any particular area of Torah that a person happens to be studying at a time. One could even say that's delving into any particular area of the Tanakh in depth with the different Mefarshim, the different commentators, and all the different things that pertain to it. There's also a concept which can be described and defined as Talmud. From all of this, we understand that when a person studies Mishnah today, seeing that no one today studies Mishnah simply by reading the text of the Mishnah or reciting it or memorizing it, but one does so certainly at the beginning, when one first needs to know what the Mishnah is saying. One first does so by reading the Mishnah and reading with it a commentary. Some people might use the commentary of Rabbi Obadiah mi Bartanura, as he's usually called, even though he in fact came from the town of Bertinoro in Italy. And his Perush, of course, became the standard Perush in Am Yisrael for the last 500 plus years, because it is an excellent Perush on the Mishnah. What does he do in this Perush of his? He gives you the quintessence of what the Talmud says on this Mishnah, so that you understand the essential reasons and explanations which underlie and underpin the Mishnah, so that when you read the Mishnah with his Perush, you in fact are not studying just Mishnah, you are studying Mishnah and Talmud, Mishnah and Gemara together. The same is true if one studies the Perush, the Mishnah with the Perush of the Melechet Shlomo, or whether one studies the Mishnah with the Perush of Harav Pinchas Kahati Zitzal. All of these Perushim give us the essential explanations and definitions provided by the Talmud, by the Gemara, which therefore immediately remove one from a pure study of Mishnah as was understood, as this term was understood in the time of Chazal, and moves one into a realm of studying Mishnah with Gemara. And lest someone think that I am now introducing some new concept, or this is my own take on the matter, then you should know that this is not the case. The well-known Perush on the Mishnah, the Tosfot Yom Tov, written by Rabbeinu Agadol, Rabbeinu Yom Tov Lipman Heller Halevi, Talmid Muvhak of the Marami Prague, he writes this explicitly in his Hakdama, in the introduction to his Perush on the Mishnah. He writes that today, when we learn the Mishnah with the Perush of Rabbi Obadiah mi Bartanura, or any other, for that matter, as I've said, any other Perush which does the same, that is to say, which conveys to us the essential teachings and explanations and interpretations of the Talmud on that Mishnah. When one does so, one is no longer studying just Mishnah, one is studying Mishnah and Talmud, Mishnah and Gemara. And therefore, I encourage all people to spend, as the Baraita in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed instructs us. This is the basis for what the Rambam that we just quoted. This is the basis for the Rambam, where he said that a person has to divide his study into three parts. The Talmud in Masechet Kiddushin Daf Lamed states that a person must divide his learning into three parts: a third Tanakh, a third Mishnah, and a third Talmud. And all parts of the Torah are fitted in one way or another into those three general categories. Therefore, when a person, as I've heard some people say, when a person says, I don't like studying Gemara, or I find studying Gemara difficult, or I find it boring, or I don't find it relevant. I heard someone recently say, for example, that I go to a Daf Yomi shiur where I hear discussions about all kinds of details about how a person is to give a bill of divorce, a get, to his wife, and this really is not interesting and doesn't apply to me, because I don't intend to divorce my wife. The answer to such a person is, first of all, you don't need to necessarily study that Masechet before you studied many other Masechtot, which are much more relevant and more important for you to be familiar with at this point in your life than Masechet Gittin. But apart from that, a person also needs to know that studying Gemara, whether it's Bikiyuth or Be'iyun, whether studying it quickly or in depth, is not for everybody, certainly not to the extent that it should be the main material of Torah, the main source of Torah that a person studies on a daily basis. If a person studies Mishnah with a Perush, or more than one Perush, which explain the essence and the interpretation, as we find in the Gemara, of that Mishnah, then a person is studying Mishnah and Talmud, because Talmud can be learnt and can be dealt with on many different levels. Studying the Mishnah, therefore, with the Perush of Rav Kahati is one level of study of Talmud with Mishnah, and studying the Mishnah with the Gemara without Rashi is another level of Talmud, and studying it with Rashi is another further deeper level of Talmud, and studying it with the Chidushim of the Rashba is another level. And every person has his own particular level and style and way of studying Mishnah and Talmud, but no one can say that I don't need to study Mishnah or Talmud. So therefore I encourage all people to study Mishnah regularly on a daily basis, as the halacha requires us, as it appears in the Baraita and Kiddushin Daf Lamed, as it appears in Rambam, Hilchot Talmud Torah Perek Aleph, as it appears in the Shulchan Aruch and the Tur, in Yoredei Asiman Resh Mem Wow. This is halacha pesuka, and it applies to all Jews, and there is no Jew today, almost no Jew today, who can claim that I am unable to do so, because today we have all the books and all the commentaries and translations, etc., so that almost every Jew who wishes to do so is able to study Mishnah and Talmud, on at least on some level, based on the level and the abilities and the time available to each and every one of us.
Thank you, Rabbi bar-Hayim. We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. We would also like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.